Friends and fellow workers, this is a time which tries the hearts of men. This is the time where we's got to stick together like glue. We know what we want, and we'll get it even if we is blind. Kid Blink, New York Tribune. 1899, New York. In the busiest city in the world, in the streets that were usually filled with the sound of bustling people and newspaper headlines, one group of boys were not working. New York was put on hold. In the late 1890s, orphans and runaways roamed the streets of New York, doing whatever they could to survive. There were plenty of ways for young children to earn a living. The most popular was selling newspapers. Early in the morning to late at night, kids ages 8 to 14 would earn 20 cents a day by hawking headlines and carrying the banner. But not on the hot morning of July 21st, 1899, when the newsboys, also known as the Newsies, went on strike. It all started with the Spanish-American War. The newspapers were the only way to get the news, so during that time, newspaper profits skyrocketed. All of the newspaper companies raised their wholesale prices for the newsies from 50 cents per hundred to 60 cents per hundred to earn more money. It was successful until the war ended on August 12, 1898. Everyone lowered their prices back to 50 cents per hundred, except Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. Pulitzer owns the New York World, and Hearst owned the New York Journal, the two most powerful papers in New York. Pulitzer and Hearst wanted to continue their success. They kept charging the newsies 60 cents per hundred. This was hard on the newsies. They barely had enough money for food as it was. Most of them didn't have homes or families and had to sleep in the streets. The newsies were tired of being treated like dirt and formed a strike committee that included Jack Sullivan, Kid Blink, Boots, and several others. We went to the bloke who sells the papers, and we tells him that it's got to be 2% or nothing. He says, "What you gonna do about it if you don't get 'em?" "Strike," says I. Said Boots, the spokesperson for the strike. On July 21st, the Newsies of the World and Journal went on strike. At first, no one took the Newsies seriously, but the Newsies were not kidding around. They refused to sell the papers, mobbed paper wagons, and stopped the traffic going into New York. They would beat up any newsboys who would try to sell the World or the Journal. "Well then, the strike is ordered. There must be no half measures, my men. If you sees anyone selling the World or the Journal, swat 'em." Boots. Pulitzer and Hearst were losing money fast. The circulation dropped 2/3. They had to do something, and quick. Pulitzer hired grown men to sell papers for $2 a week. That was more than the Newsies made in a month. He also hired strikebreakers to attack the Newsies. It failed. The Newsies were growing stronger in numbers and could not be broken. What started out as 100 boys ended up as thousands. They were joined by Newsies all over New York, including Brooklyn and Harlem. They stormed the streets and created an uproar. On 3rd Avenue and 125th Street, 300 strikers attacked and ripped apart newspaper vendors.
While at certain points in these thoroughfares, the streets were covered with torn copies of the New York World and Journal, New York Times.
As Pulitzer and Hertz were losing money, other papers like the New York Times, the Tribune, and the Sun were gaining money. The other papers printed front-page stories about the newsboys' strike, which were very popular and sold like hotcakes. Pulitzer had to try a different approach. He offered to lower the price for the newsies from 60 cents to 55 cents per hundred. The newsies rejected it. The strike lasted 2 weeks, and on August 2nd, 1899, Pulitzer and Hertz offered to keep the price at 60 cents per hundred, but they would buy back all unsold papers. The newsies agreed, and the strike ended. The newsies beat Goliath by standing up for what they knew was right. Then they went back to hawking headlines. But that's not where it ends. Strikes like the newsies happened all over the United States for the years that followed. The newsboys protested against the unfairness of the world and proved to the journal that they were not invisible nobodies.